Okay. And like to welcome everybody. We got a special guest tonight, a little last minute. I got a call that he was ready to take some time out, and I jumped on the chance to do this interview. Tanawah Downing is out there really changing things up, and wanted to appreciate you taking your time tonight to have a couple really deep conversations with you. And I got some good questions for you, but love to hear what you've been up to. But could you give us a little backstory on kind of where you're at right now and what kind of into the mission that you're working on right now?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, everybody. Thanks for listening to me. And I just got to say that this has been an incredible journey, and we're almost there. So my background is that I spent a number of years in the military in special operations. I separated from there and I went into intelligence, and I have some advanced degrees in law and forensics and substantive law in particular, which is the exact opposite of an attorney. An attorney goes through what's known as adjunctive law. So they learn about the adjudication process. They learn about all the laws that remove freedom. So statutes, ordinances, customs, judgment, rulings, these are all laws that remove freedom and put a person into prison. So substantive law would be the exact opposite. All that I studied was the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the United States. I don't know and don't care at all about state statutes. So we're actually known as advocates. We speak on behalf of others in with regard to legal matters. And so when you think about the fact that the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, that it didn't abolish slavery at all. It actually not only permits it, but codified the legality of it within our foundational law. Because what the 13th Amendment says, this was the amendment that was adopted and ratified with the intent to actually destroy the slavery institution. What it actually says is that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except as punishment for crime. And this is, one of these truths that we've been lied to for such a long time, because we go around the whole world and say, we need to set all these people free, when in all reality, here in our own country, we don't practice what we preach overseas. And we need to come to terms with this truth and this reality. So when you look at an attorney is in the business of making a person into a criminal. That's what they're trained to do. And understanding the 13th Amendment took the term criminal and slave, or prisoner and slave, and made them synonymous with one another, made them the same thing. A prisoner is a slave and a slave is a prisoner. They mean the same thing under American laws in the 13th Amendment that we passed. And as a result, they have a degree in enslavement. That's what it is. And so they're in the business of putting a person into prison, creating a slave. I'm in the business of restoring freedom and setting them free. And so that's why I'm effective in the things that I'm doing. That's why attorneys are not effective in what they do, because when you go to an attorney and ask him for to help with the post-conviction relief, they're incapable of doing such an act because their degree doesn't facilitate the setting free of that slave. It just creates them. So, but I spent a number of years. I started an engineering firm right after I left the intelligence agency. We were extremely successful. I did a lot of very, very high level work within national security here in America. My last project, I was the chief architect and managing consultant for Los Angeles World Airport, LAX's LAWA's video surveillance and security implementation program, $32 million program that it was deploying certain security countermeasures for the three LAWA facilities, including LAX. So I just put out a video just the other day on TikTok and Facebook, and it has to do with national security. And what you guys got to understand is that I know national security very, very well. I was very, very well respected within that industry. I was 4 times appointed chairman of the National Video Surveillance Working Group. I was the youngest chairman of the National Physical Security Council. I was chairman of the National Transportation Security Council. I was 4 years. I was the subject matter expert for the maritime industry for the Critical Infrastructure Working Group. I know national security. And national security, I've come to understand, is simply code word for domestic terrorism. And we need to understand that you do not protect the people from the government, you protect the government from the people. Vice versa. You don't protect the government from people. And so the things that I put into place, the initiatives that I helped develop, the programs that I put in, and solutions that I advocated, I now have a duty and responsibility to correct those and to make sure that we understand that those knee-jerk overreactions that we had after September 11th that actually resulted in a massive deprivation of our rights and freedoms as a result of the trauma and those intense events of September 11th, that I have a duty and responsibility to ensure that we don't continue down that path any further. So there's a number of things that happened to me that made me realize this. God called me back, put me on the right side, made me realize that I was on the wrong side, and had spent half my life there. So, during that period of time, I spent half my life working for the government, advancing my own, all my talents, using them to advance my own interests. I made millions and millions of dollars doing it. But in the swipe of a pen and the blink of an eye, it was all taken from me. And so I just figured that this second half of life, we're going to use those talents towards someone else to see if we can't build something that's going to last. And I'm telling you right now, we have just built the biggest civil rights case in American history. And it's going to decide the most significant decision for the American people. And I'm very proud to be able to serve you guys, be able to do this. And I'm honored that God chose me to help lead this. Thank you.
Now, we're real happy that you're doing what you're doing, because I think a lot of what we don't have is the education into the law, common law, Constitution. We have kind of this cookie cutter explanation of what we're supposed to be and how a citizen works within the court systems. And the true understanding of law is given to very few. And even within the lawyers that are around, they don't even understand it. It's only when I've talked to retired judges and some of these older gentlemen where I start to understand the behind the scenes, where it's very eye-opening. And one of the things I like so much about what you're doing is that you're taking the understanding that there's so many people that are negatively affected by not having this education, by not understanding the actual laws that we're supposed to be having. And if we are not understanding these laws, we're kind of in a position of slavery.
Yeah. Laws are not supposed to be complex. When you read the Constitution of the United States, these provisions are not difficult. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. There's no way to interpret that other than the fact that you must have an indictment by a grand jury before arresting someone and holding them over for a capital or an infamous crime. When it says in Article 3, the trial of all crimes, with the exception of impeachment, shall be by jury, and the trial shall occur in the state in which the crime is said to be committed. That's not complicated. It's very, very simple. But the problem is that when you develop this vast, architecture of laws with 800 million pages of statutes, ordinances, customs, and judge-made rulings, it becomes convoluted. If you can drive down the street at 2 a.m. in a blue car lawfully, but you can't in a red car unless it's before 5 p.m., then how can you possibly know that you're breaking the law? And, one of the things is that my degree deals with law enforcement, the enforcement of laws. I have a degree that a prosecutor should have. One of the primary advantages that I have is that I can look at an issue with neutrality, wanting to determine the truth rather than wanting to make this person into a criminal, because I can look at things objectively. I understand that there's 3 elements of every single crime, a criminal tehedron, that you must have mens rea, which is a guilty mind. You must have corpus delicti. You must have actus reus. These are 3 elements of crime. Eliminate any one of those 3 things, and there is no crime, can be no crime. So what I'm getting at here is that mens rea is known as a guilty mind. If you don't know that you're breaking the law, you can't break the law. So a lot of these people, they're arrested on arbitrary charges that they don't even understand that they're breaking the law. If you have to have a Juris Doctorate, a PhD, in order to understand what the law states, then how can you expect the common man to understand that they violated the law? We need to dumb things down. We need to make things more simple, and there's ways that we can do that. But the primary way is that we do not rely on something that's not law. You don't rely upon a branch of government that has no authority to be able to create law, which would be the executive branch or the judicial branch. Which, when we talk about Chevron, because Chevron is much bigger of an issue than I think that most people realize. What was going on with Chevron was 40 years ago, right? 40 years ago, they permitted the executive branch, because the executive branch deals with law enforcement. So the executive branch was able to take an arbitrary law, or what they perceived to be arbitrary or capricious, and be able to clarify it based upon their own expertise. So they were able to say, well, that's not really clear, therefore I'm going to make it clear based upon my policy, and I'm going to enforce it based upon the manner in which I choose to do. And unfortunately, the executive branch has no constituted authority to be able to create law, modify the law, and that must be done by the legislative branch per Article 1, Section 1 of the United States Constitution, where it says that all legislative powers vested in Congress of the United States, consisting of the Senate and House of Representatives. So Chevron was a huge deal, but you got to look at the timeline, because this is very, very important. We have had an 800% increase in the prison population in 30 years. 30 years. And that's what's called the mass incarceration phenomenon. But you got to look at the period of time, because 40 years ago, we had Chevron, which permitted the executive branch, permitted prosecutors to be able to do whatever they want, right? Based upon their own ambiguity, as they would say. This is the period of time that this primary issue that I'm dealing with, this grand jury issue, came into play, because the prosecutor started saying, well, it's not really clear whether I have to do with the indictment by a grand jury, therefore I'm going to go with information instead. And so that's what they started doing. That's the basis of this mass incarceration and this 800% increase. It's driven from Chevron and the deference situation, which is why I say that, you know, I'm not responsible for Chevron, but I certainly brought forward the case and the argument that's driving the court to have to remove that. Because for one, I have two main questions that we're bringing to the Supreme Court. One is, do states have the right to enact and substitute their own alternative legislation for the provisions that guarantees the Constitution? Now, you would think that that's a rhetorical question, that it doesn't even need an answer, because it's so clear that states cannot do that, right? They can't enact their own law and substitute it for what the Constitution clearly states is required, because that would mean that the state laws are more supreme and superior than the Constitution. We know that that's not true, but yet that's where we're at today. The states have enacted their own laws and substituted it for the provision that guarantees the Constitution. And that comes under the executive branch's authority for the prosecutors to be able to charge by way of what's called information, not by indictment, as required by the Constitution of the United States. So we've got a massive number of people that are in prison today, massive. You know, there's more than 700,000 people across the United States of America today under the mass incarceration phenomenon that are not there with constituted authority. Their convictions are 100% void, without force or effect. The states have no authority to hold them. It was a criminal act of kidnapping and deprivation of rights under the law, as well as conspiracy. And we need to bring this to the people's attention, because those people, a lot of them are there innocent. And I'm gonna be very, very honest with that. And the ones that aren't innocent, I would say that a big percentage of them are there under charges that they shouldn't be there under.
Many of our forefathers would argue that if you had one innocent man and 1,000 men of guilty, if you run one innocent man's life, that justice system is corrupt and needs to be disbarred, it's disrupted.
100%. You know, Benjamin Franklin said that it's better that 1,000 guilty go free than for one innocent man to suffer. And we've got to look at this with honest and true reality, because there's some statistics that people should understand. There's been nearly 1,500 executions here in America since the late 70s. Of them, 139 have been proven to have been innocent after they're murdered. Those are terrible. That's a terrible number. Another 186 of the remaining were exonerated after being placed on a death row. Between those two numbers alone, that's 18%. 18% of the people that have been placed on a death row that were factually innocent. And that's based upon the evidence that we have, that you know, whatever DNA still exists, or, I mean, those numbers are terrible, 18%. And another one that you should know about is, if you were to open up the criminal procedure manual, the Georgetown University Criminal Procedure Manual, it was written by a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals judge. And if you were to open up to the preface and go down to paragraph number 4, what you would find that it says is that most prosecutors across the United States agree that as much as 15% of people in prison are innocent. But that is an acceptable deviance, because our system isn't perfect. So we have a system that says that it's acceptable to have 15%, and I'm going to say that number is quite a little bit higher, but they say that up to 15% of the people in prison are innocent, but that is an acceptable deviance because our system isn't perfect. If that number is correct, then that would mean that right now, today, as of this moment, there's more than 600,000 people innocent that are suffering across the country pre and post conviction, and that is not acceptable. Not acceptable in any country, state, city, or household, for any innocent person to suffer.
Absolutely. Well, I see also there's another argument here where we've had slavery in the past, but we've never had it to this level of tax-sponsored slavery, where the average person is paying for the facilities and they're making profit in a private way, where this has now become a business. And now law and business and profit is a toxic situation. It's a very dangerous situation. And I've got to, I applaud what you're doing, because the forces that you're taking on is not just the judicial system. You know, it's real estate, equity firms, it's banks, teachers' retirement funds. They have had so much money go into this, and it's a profit. It's a huge profit cow for them. And have you had any conversations or talks with people about how you could change some of the system, or is it we're just going to tear it apart and then see where it goes? Or have you thought about that at all on that side of things? Because that is a huge. I'm sure you've talked about that before, but
I haven't
it's a
talked
power.
about it much. I haven't talked about it much, and I would say that we should probably do a show just on its own about that, because I do have an idea. I do have a plan, and
Okay.
and it has to do with how we look at the system, how we deal with these people. Because I'm not an abolitionist, right? I know that there's people that are a danger to society, and we need to address that danger. But the way that we do it today is not right. You cannot take hurting people and put them into hurtful situations and expect them to be healed. That's not going to work. You know, we have other nations that we can use as examples for a restorative-based justice system. Yep. And you know, the statistics are out there. Evidence is out there that shows we are one of the very few nations that chose to go punitive when we were dealing with the drug issue. And it's just not going to work. It will never work, because we need to take these people. We need to understand that they're hurting, and that we don't want them to hurt anymore, because hurting people hurt people. And so this is when we incentivize the enslavement of people, when we permit the government to be able to take its own citizens based upon the laws that they create. And then they allow their own people to do the investigation. They allow their own people to bring the charges, to prosecute, to judge the system, and then to manage the slaves as well, and to profit off of the slaves. Then you can understand why that government would choose to enslave as many people as possible, and then keep the rest of society in an ignorant state of what's really going on, because it does not want to give up these slaves. But we need to be honest, because when you look at the foundation, you know, the big problem we have is that our country, when our founders and forefathers, when they started our country, they started what was called an egalitarianism form of government, which is the belief that all men are equal. And so in order for all men to be equal, government laws must first treat them equal. That's the way that our system is designed to work. But they made a huge mistake, and they've been leading us to dissolution. And this is what I'm trying to head off. I'm trying to make us all understand that what we believe in is not real. That justice is about equality. It's about fairness. It's about procedures and processes. It's about healing. It's about restoration. It is not about vengeance. It's not about paying back the things that you've done or for debt. And yet that's what we have in place today, because our founders and forefathers, when they chose to create a country and then say that all men were equal, but then refused to give up what they called their property, and they created a class-based system. They created a system that's not based upon the foundation of just principles, because there's not equality built into it. They created a system that facilitates and permits the classification of people. And thus we understand that today we have a criminal enslavement system that's enslaving people, because the whole entire system was created by slave owners that had the intent to preserve and protect their property. So justice is not, it's not good or bad. It's simply a compromise between two evils, because until we stop and remove the slavery roots to the system, until we remove the Fugitive Slave Act, the fact that a fugitive is a slave and a slave is a fugitive, until we remove the 13th Amendment and correct the exception clause that says that a prisoner is a slave and a slave is a prisoner, until we do that, we can never resolve this system that is literally going to enslave every man, woman, and child.
I really want to go back to what you just said. I think that is the biggest powerful thing, is that we actually need to take some of these things out. The fact that you said that the 13th Amendment needs to be taken out because what it created, that understanding is mind-blowing. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from anything else you said, but just understanding that little verbiage, how much it changes, it dehumanizes you, and it creates, as soon as you make any of these mistakes that they consider laws or anything, now all of a sudden you become a slave. So there is an acceptable time to have slavery. And with that law in effect, we're going to be in a cyclical. It's not going to change.
Yeah, I mean, we need to remember that 1868, we passed the 13th Amendment. You know, we finished the Civil War. 1865. We finished the Civil War. We thought that everything was going to be wonderful, that we're going to abolish slavery. It's gone, and we can go about our life. But the problem is that we've never understood this enemy that we call justice. We've never truly understood it, and that's why we've never been able to resolve this. I mean, we had the Revolutionary War to begin with, and didn't get resolved. We had the Civil War, didn't get resolved. We had the 13th Amendment, didn't get resolved. We had the convict leasing system at the turn of the century, didn't get resolved. We had the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, 1968, didn't get resolved. Now we have mass incarceration. And I'm just wondering, America, if you're going to learn this time the truth, because slavery is not, it has nothing to do with race. We've been told that for too long, and that's what we keep looking at, because we keep talking about race-based issues, that race is what the system's focused on. And look at the overpopulation of certain demographics within our society in the prison system, and we point at that and we say that obviously it's based upon race. But we got to understand that racism was simply a diversionary tactic that our government created in order to pit the people against themselves, so we don't come together and realize that it's a government that's true antagonist. Because the truth is that every single slavery institution in the history of the world, every single one of them was an economic issue, right? It's an economic issue, because if you owe a debt to someone and you can't pay that debt, you could sell yourself into slavery in order to settle the debt. It was a feasible alternative for debt management. That's the origin of every single slavery institution that exists, including ours. Because if you choose to violate the law, you incur a debt that is owed to society. And if you're too poor to pay that debt, you can sell yourself into slavery to settle that debt. It is a debt-based system. It's not a race-based system. And so when we understand, the true reality of it, that it is an economic issue, then we can understand that this isn't about the people. There's no reason for us to be fighting amongst each other when we can understand that economics is the government. Economics brings people together. Race brings them apart. And so the more we believe, this narrative that they've told us for 243 years, that it's black versus white, and that's not it. It's rich versus poor. And we can resolve this issue once we accept that. But the problem that we're having as a nation right now is that when we take our poor and the disenfranchised and the disadvantaged, when we take them and we push them down into a slavery institution and enslave them, we're going to destroy our country, because slavery has destroyed every single nation that has ever employed it. What we need to do is we need to take the poor and disenfranchised and we need to raise them up, because when we raise them up, we will raise up the whole nation together. The nation's going down right now because of our own ignorance and desire to generate revenue at the expense of our citizenry and then trade it on the New York Stock Exchange in the form of Geo Group, Core Civic, and CCNA. This is a disgusting institution that has survived long enough. And it's time for us to destroy this institution. And if we have to do it through destruction, I'm more than happy to go that route. But that's not the route I want to take, because I love this country. I fought for this country every single day of my life. I would never seek destruction of this nation. But if we cannot resolve this, if we cannot remove this institution equitably and fairly by self-reflection and good judgment, then we'll rip it down brick by brick. And I promise you, all of you, that I will not stop until it's exposed. Every single lie that they've ever told, every single person that they threw overboard, every single person that they lashed onto a tree and whipped. We're going to make sure that every single story's been told. So I need the court to understand that that I'm not coming after you because I want destruction. I'm coming after you because I want you to make the right decision. And that's all I ask. Make the right decision, do the right thing, stand up for these people, enforce the laws that you're lawfully obligated to enforce, and discharge the duties of your office. Help the people, don't hurt them anymore. We're done with this bullshit. We're done with it.
I love where you're at right now, because there's I've spent so much time talking to judges and people back in the day like Jordan Maxwell, guys that have studied the law and have spent time pretty much giving us very limited solutions. Like, this is where we're at. You're coming at the complete opposite side right now. You've already have a gameplay in place. You've already talked to how many different district judges? You've already 30 plus states you've been to.
So we've served 32 state attorney generals through their agents, and so we served either state patrol, and there's a very specific reason why I chose state patrol, and I'll explain that in one moment, or an assistant attorney general. But I personally traveled to 32 states. I collected criminal affidavits on behalf of victims within that state, and got those criminal affidavits, and then we provide service on the attorney general. Of course, service to agent is service to principal. So what we did, this is a scenario. Let me just lay it out, because some of your audience might not know about it, or some of the people that might come in to watch this may not be as familiar with it. So Clause 1 of Amendment 5 to the United States Constitution, I think we would all agree that that's part of the Constitution in all intents and purposes, because we ratified it on December 15th, 1791 by the people of the United States. Therefore, it is certainly part of the Constitution. And as a result, according to Article 6 of the United States Constitution, the judges in every state shall be bound thereby anything in the Constitution or laws of the state contrary notwithstanding. So because it's part of the Constitution and was ratified and adopted as such, the judges in every state are bound to do it. And failure to do so would be a deprivation of rights under the authority of a state law. So when a state enacts its own alternative legislation for the provisions and guarantees of the Constitution, that would be an unconstitutional act. Of course, we cannot alter the Constitution in any other manner other than the way in which the Constitution states in the special amending article of Article 5. So it cannot be done by legislative fiat. It can't be done by states imposing their will upon the rest of the nation. It must be done by an authentic act of people in accordance with Article 5. So what's happening is that 23 states across the nation have enacted laws that permit their prosecuting attorneys within the state to charge by way of information, not by indictment, as required by the Constitution of the United States. Now, the first clause of Article 5 of Amendment 5 says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Now, that's clear. You must have an indictment by a grand jury before holding someone over for a capital or an infamous crime. So when a state enacts its own alternative legislation that says that prosecuting attorneys can charge by way of what's called information, not by indictment, then that would be an unconstitutional act, would be an unconstitutional law, an inferior state law that's permitting them to do something contrary to the Constitution. Now, information, according to Title 18, subsection 555, you can only use information for non-infamous crimes, for misdemeanors. So if it's anything other than a misdemeanor, in fact, it's not the misdemeanor versus felony that actually cues whether or not it's an infamous crime. What it is the amount of time that you can be sentenced to. Not the amount of time you get sentenced to, but the amount of time you can be sentenced to. So if you could be sentenced to more than 1 year, a year and a day, right? Anything, if you can be sentenced to that, it is an infamous crime, and it must have an indictment by a grand jury before arresting someone and holding them over for that offense. You cannot do it any other way. So, and that's according to the Fifth Amendment. So if you perform an arrest based upon the incorrect charging instrument, that arrest must be unconstitutional because it derives from the relying upon an inferior state law that directs someone to do something that's unconstitutional, something contrary to the Constitution. So what happens now is that these prosecutors in these 23 states, and it's not just the 23, those are 23 that outright don't do the grand jury. A good example is the state of Washington. Article 1, Section 26 of Washington State's Constitution says, no grand jury shall be drawn or summoned in any county. So in the history of the state of Washington, its inferior state constitution has stated, I will not do what is clearly required by the Constitution of the United States of America. And if you can grasp and wrap your head around that idea there, that means that the state of Washington, in its history, has never convicted a person legally and lawfully consistent with what the Constitution of the United States demands. That's a pretty big deal. That's a very big deal. And it's not just Washington. It's also the state of Connecticut, state of Pennsylvania, state of Michigan, state of Oklahoma, state of California. These are states that are acting in direct willful defiance to exactly what the Constitution of the United States states must be done. That's a big deal. And it gives me the opportunity to be able to come forward with some even bigger discussions, right? Because that gets us in the door, but there's a lot more that we need to talk about, because 99% of all criminal defendants are not permitted to be present in that grand jury to confront those accusations against them. And despite the fact that they are required to be there, right? Because the purpose of the grand jury is to protect the accused from hasty or malicious charges. That proceeding is for the benefit of the accused, not the accuser. So when you fail to allow the accused to be present to confront the accusations against him, that's not a grand jury. That's improper. In fact, that's a crime, because conspiracy to obstruct justice is when two or more persons conspire for the purpose of preventing any party in any cause from participating in said cause, commits that crime. So when the accuser and the accused or the prosecutor prevent the accused from being present by not providing notification of the hearing or some other manner, when they prevent one party in that cause from participating in said cause, they just committed a criminal act, right?
Wouldn't that put almost the entire bar association, almost every attorney that's practicing in court under this?
That's right. That's why I went and served 32 state attorney generals, because when the state attorney general failed to take action as lawfully required under the laws of the United States, Title 18, subsection 242 and 241, when that attorney general failed to take action, he is the general of every attorney. By his inaction, he has implicated every single attorney within his state in this criminal conspiracy. Every single one. There isn't a single member of the bar, unless they want to, because once you've been notified of a criminal conspiracy, once you've been notified and made aware of it, right? Which I made 32 state attorney generals aware. I've made a lot more people aware, but we made the highest law enforcement officer within those 32 states aware that there is a criminal conspiracy that exists within the state by and between the prosecuting attorney and the judge, and now they need to take action, because once made aware, the laws of criminal conspiracy says that that any person who, having knowledge of any of the wrongs conspired to be done, and who have the power to prevent or aid in the prevention of the commission of same, neglects or refuses to do so, may be joined as defendants in the action. So when you notify one of the highest law enforcement officer within the state through one of his agents, because remember, notice to agent is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. So when you notify an assistant attorney general of a criminal conspiracy that's going on through a written affidavit from a person with lawful authority to be able to carry evidence from the victim to the agency, then they have to take action lawfully required. And so when that happens, there's only two ways that you can mitigate your culpability within the criminal conspiracy once made aware. Way number one is you can notify the authorities of the crimes, right? Number two, you can notify your co-conspirators of your intent to no longer participate in a criminal conspiracy, but that must be done by some affirmative action. You must show and document that you did something to notify your co-conspirators of your intent to no longer participate, which is what the Supreme Court did in Chevron. We'll come back to that in a moment, but that's exactly what the Supreme Court did. And I'm proud of the Supreme Court for doing it, but there's a much bigger issue that they're going to have to still come to terms with, and that's what we're working on right now. But nonetheless, what they did was they notified their co-conspirators, the executive branch. We're no longer going to participate in this criminal conspiracy. That's what Chevron was all about, right? Because when you look at the fact that a prosecuting attorney works for the executive branch, and they were coming forward with the improper charging instrument based upon their own policy under the Chevron deference ruling, and then they were bringing that forward to a judge. They were saying, here, judge, I would like you to hold this person over for this offense. Well, that judge, he had a duty and responsibility to make sure that the power he exercised was consistent with his authority. If he exercises authority based upon someone else's abuse of authority, then the power he exercises no power at all. So when the prosecuting attorney comes forward with the incorrect charging instrument, depriving a person of right guaranteed by the Constitution in violation of Title 18, subsection 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, which states any person who, under the color of any state statute, ordinance, custom, or regulation, deprives any person of rights secured by the Constitution, commits that crime. So when the prosecuting attorney relies upon an inferior state law to deprive a person of right guaranteed by the Constitution, he just committed a felony. Just committed a felony. And so when he hands that charging instrument, relying upon that inferior state law to a judge, and then that judge says, well, this looks good because I don't know any better, because that's not my responsibility is to determine the correct charging instrument, but it is my responsibility to ensure that the correct documentation is in place, then I'm now relying upon an inferior state statute to exercise my power, which means that now I, judge, have established a criminal conspiracy by and between the prosecuting attorney to deprive this individual rights, because that's Title 18, subsection 241, which states when two or more persons conspire for the purpose of depriving any person of any right secured by the Constitution commits that crime. So now you have a criminal conspiracy that's been established based upon the prosecuting attorney, based upon the executive officer's abuse of authority and reliance upon inferior law to deprive a person of right guaranteed by the Constitution. Now you have the judge, the prosecuting attorney establish a conspiracy by and between them. The judge then signs that order, hands that order off to an officer and says, "Officer, I'd like you to go out and make this arrest on this individual." Well, that officer also has a duty and responsibility to ensure that the power he exercises is consistent with his authority. If he chooses to exercise power based upon the judge's and the prosecuting attorney's abusive powers, then the arrest that he makes is without force or effect, because he himself is now engaged in a criminal conspiracy to deprive of rights, because two or more persons conspire for the purpose of preventing any party in any cause, right? So once that officer goes out and performs an arrest that was not lawful because they didn't have the proper documentation, because they didn't follow the rules, then when they perform that arrest, now you have the crime of kidnapping that's occurred, Title 18, subsection 1201, and it is a federal offense because the individual is being held over for ransom in the form of bail. And anytime that you have a Title 18, subsection 241 or 242 crime that occurs in conjunction with kidnapping, the punishment is, as prescribed by law, death. So these are very, very, very serious offenses that are happening across the country prolifically, that I'm going to tell you the judges didn't know was happening. They weren't aware. They were ignorant to the situation, as was, I believe, most of the prosecutors. But that ignorance only lasts so long, because when I drive around this country and I drop off criminal affidavits to 32 attorney generals describing this exact scenario, and they choose to do nothing about it, there isn't a single bar member that can represent the people on this case in this country until and if and when they choose to notify their co-conspirators of their intent to no longer participate in criminal conspiracy. So if there's a single attorney in the country that wants to get on board with this massive civil rights case that I have, then you damn well better get over here and start talking with me. And you better notify your co-conspirators of your intent to no longer participate in that bullshit. Because if you don't, then you won't be representing people in any of this. And I'll go ahead and take all the glory for it, because I can represent the people. I can act as the attorney general, because there isn't a single attorney general in the country that can represent the people, because every single one of them chose to be silent on this issue and not do what was lawfully required to mitigate your culpability in this criminal conspiracy.
Because that's what I would ask is, have you had any responses from any of the attorney generals, or are they all in a holding pattern?
They're all in a holding pattern, but they're in a holding pattern as I expected them to do. But that holding pattern is only going to last for so long, right? Because this is not going to go away. This is not going to end. You guys can try to make me get into a motorcycle accident. You can do whatever you want, but if you don't recognize the fact that I'm divinely protected at this point, and that the things that I'm doing is going to be exposed, and even if I don't make it, there's enough people now that are following this that it's not going to go away. Your bullshit days are over. And so, no, there's not. But the reason why is because Alexander the Great, right? He said an army of lions and bears led by a sheep will be defeated by an army of sheep led by a lion. So if the Supreme Court of the United States has been committing crimes in violating the Constitution of the United States ever since it's existed, because you got to remember, they're not for the Constitution, because if the Constitution got its way, they would all be out of a job, because the Constitution declared all men are to be free, right? So they are anti-Constitution. They've been putting into place rulings that are against the Constitution, causing disaffection to the nation, because harmony and peace across the Union doesn't create conflict and crime. Conflict and crime makes them and their institution a lot of money. So they've been undermining the Union. They've been undermining the Constitution. These rulings that they've been put into place are not in the best interest of what the people need, but rather what's in the best interest of what the business needs, because they want to generate revenue and enslave people and do these things that are contrary to what we Americans and we the people want. And so if the Supreme Court of the United States is a criminal, then let's just call it a sheep right now. Let's just say that that's the sheep. And that means that it has a whole army of lions and bears that are protecting it and have been protecting it for years and years and years. Keeps us from getting to it. Every single step within the justice system is simply an obstruction. It's nothing more, right? every single one of these judges are bears. Every single one of these prosecutors are lions. They're tough. They're mean. We don't want to engage them directly because there's too many of them and they have the power. But we may be a bunch of sheep, right? We may be a bunch of sheep. We're weak. We're powerless. We don't have the guns and badges. But at the end of the day, if we rally behind the leadership of a lion, and if that lion, the leadership is able to take down the leadership of that army of lions and bears, then the whole army will fall. They won't have power anymore. And that's why, you know, when you consider the fact that I'm coming forward and I'm engaging the Supreme Court directly, that's my target. I'm sorry, you guys. I know that you're all getting beat to shit out here in these cases and these courts. I can't fight all those battles for you, but I can fight one. And when I do, I will win. And when I do, we'll send help down from above, because those courts will no longer have any power when I finish the battle that I'm engaged in right now. They want, and so I'm focused on that one pursuit, that one battle. I'm hunting it. And when I get finished, there won't be any more power at these courts out here at the edge, because they're controlled by it. So one of the things that you guys should understand is that, you know, going back to that analogy, an army of lions and bears led by a sheep will be defeated by an army of sheep led by a lion. So if these prosecutors are lions, right? How does a lion hunt? Well, they jump in the middle of the herd, a herd of sheep, and they draw them off on their own, arguing and defending themselves, right? Because they can't take them down as in a group. So that's what these prosecutors do. They get you off on your own, defending yourself in your own case, right? They draw you away from the rest of the herd and the rest of the argument. They want you out there defending yourself, because when you do, they can take you down. But if we came together under one single argument, one single issue, one single focus, they cannot take us down, right? So if we focus on the criminal act that they're committing against us, right? Jurisdiction, for instance, because that's the one thread sewn among every one of these cases, whether it's criminal, whether it's civil, whether it's child protective services, guardianship, does not matter. If we focus on jurisdiction and the Article 3 issue, that in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. If we focus on the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States had a constitutional obligation that said that if a state is a party in a cause, you must be the court of original jurisdiction, then my question to them is, why is it that you guys have failed to fulfill the obligation that you've had for 243 years? Because every single one of these cases is state of Oklahoma versus Bob, or state of Connecticut versus Tom, or these are all state being a party to that cause. And as a result, none of these cases are valid. They are all jurisdictionally void, because anytime that a court acts without jurisdiction, what it renders is of no value at all. It's completely void, without force or effect. So if the Supreme Court of the United States had a constitutional obligation to oversee every single case in which a state is a party, and they have failed to do so, then that means that they have broken the law since the very beginning of our nation. So if we can focus on that issue, if we can come together under that one single thing and start accusing the sheep of the crime that's committed and rally behind me, I'll take it down. I'll take it down. So that's what I'm doing right now. That's why I'm out here serving these 32 attorney generals, because I took into account the way that the prosecutors are hunting, drawing them away, and I'm jumping in the middle of these armies of lions and bears. I'm jumping in the middle of these courts, these attorney generals. I'm jumping in the middle to try to cause some chaos in amongst them, because I want to draw that sheep out by itself, defending itself. Because when it starts defending itself, I'm going to take it down. Take it down. Doesn't stand a chance. So
simple animal war. Simple animal war. It really makes sense when you put it into that.
I'm hunting.
Analogies. I appreciate it. And I know that my audience is going to love that too. And the attorney generals, the liability, and there's no time frame on when they need to respond. So for you, you're just giving them a notice of liability. That's kind of like, in short, what you're doing. They're becoming aware of what's happened. They need to respond, but you can't force them to move like chess. There's not a time period like on normally you give somebody 30 days or 10 days to respond. They're at their own. They're judging themselves pretty much. They're creating their own law within the state. There's no enforcement.
Yeah. So there's a few things I'm doing here that I know that people want some clarification on this, because I've heard a number of times that people are like, well, you know, why isn't he, you know, providing certificate of service to the court? One reason why is because I'm not going to work within the parameters of a system that doesn't even follow its own rules. You got to go back to the colonists and the revolutionists. They were fighting a superior force. I'm fighting a superior force. I would be annihilated if I fought within their battlefield. So I don't want to fight there. I don't want to go into a courtroom. I will not enter into any state court. I will not do it because I will not grant them the ability to be able to take control of me. I'm fighting asymmetrical warfare here. I'm going out and I'm fighting in places that they don't expect, in ways that they're not used to. I will not use their forms. I will not follow their procedures because they themselves don't follow those procedures. But the thing is that when you talk about the laws of criminal conspiracy, that any person who, having knowledge of any of the wrongs conspired to be done, and who have the power to prevent or aid in the prevention of the commission of same, neglects or refuses to do so, may be joined as defendants in the action. It doesn't say that I have to have a certificate of service for you to be made aware. It doesn't say that I have to have a signature from you. It doesn't say anything other than the fact that I have a video that shows that I sat and talked with your assistant attorney general and handed him a clear criminal affidavit that details this criminal conspiracy. And I would love to read exactly what it says because it's very, very simple. But the thing is that I have made the state aware through one of its agents, whether it's a state patrol officer who is an agent of the attorney general, right? And because the crime of kidnapping is what's being alleged, the state patrol in every state has jurisdiction to investigate kidnapping. You don't bring it to any other law enforcement officer, because when it comes to kidnapping, the state patrol has jurisdiction to investigate. So when I'm serving these on a Saturday and people say, well, you served it on a police officer. Well, no, I served it on a state patrol officer because the crime's alleged is kidnapping. And because the crime alleged is kidnapping, the state patrol has jurisdiction to investigate. So there's, these things that I did was very specific and focused and with purpose. But yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that I give these people ample time to be able to reflect and to determine which side of law you want to be on. Because I said this months ago when I first started the tour, that what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line in the sand, right? And I'm going to show them what the law states. And I'm going to show them that they're clearly standing on the other side of that law. And I want to give them the opportunity to decide, do you want to be a criminal? And if so, continue doing what you're doing. But if you don't, then you must return to the established rule of law and you must work with me to resolve this issue. And so we see with Chevron that I don't care what anybody says, the Supreme Court made a decision that they do not want to be implicated within this criminal conspiracy, and they notified their co-conspirators of their intent to no longer participate in that criminal conspiracy, right? And that's what happened. So this is working, and it's working very good. But now I'm going to go back to the executive, because what happened was that we have three different branches of government, right? We had a criminal conspiracy that exists by and between the executive and the judicial branch. Clearly, the judicial branch wasn't necessarily aware that this issue was going on, and thus they said, well, through Chevron, we want to extend ourselves from them, put the blame onto the executive branch because it was the prosecutors that had been making this mistake, all this time. And so that's their way of creating new oversight to correct the behavior or action of another branch of government, because that's what you have to do. If you want to correct the illegal acts of one branch of government, you must get the attention of the other two branches. And once you do, then it will provide oversight to force the other branch to correct their illegal acts. That's how it has to be done. But now we have a massive issue going on with the judicial branch. So now that we've broken up the alliances, because the book, The Art of War, written by Sun Tzu, he says that the very first step is you must break up the alliances. So we broke up the alliances with Chevron. And we said to the judicial branch said to the executive branch, we're no longer going to be a part of this, and we're now going to extend ourselves from it. And so that's issue number one. But issue number two now is that the judicial branch, just like the executive branch, the judicial branch has no constituted authority to be able to alter, amend, or destroy any of the provisions or guarantees of the United States Constitution, which was the same issue that was going on with the executive branch with Chevron. But now we have to deal with the judicial branch, because when the judicial branch creates what it calls case law, right, by a branch of government that has no authority to create law, and then it directs all these courts to follow that case law, even though it's not law, it's called administrative law, then what they're directing these courts to do is unconstitutional, because they're directing them to follow something that is not constitutionally valid. It's not law. So judges do not have the authority to alter, amend, or destroy the Constitution of the United States. They have no authority to be able to create law, because all law, all legislative power is vested in Congress of the United States. So we got the first issue kind of as a looky-loo, but now we need to circle back, because now I need to tell the executive branch that, you know what, I was hitting you guys pretty hard, prosecutors, and I was saying that it's your responsibility. You guys messed up and that you guys were bringing the incorrect charging instrument. But now I want to say to you prosecutors and you executive branch that the reality is it wasn't your fault. All right, you were doing that, and that was improper, but that derives from a case by the United States Supreme Court in 1884 called Hurtado versus California, when the Supreme Court of the United States directed all the executive officers in the country by stating that the grand jury clause is not protected under the due process provisions of the 14th Amendment. So the reality is, prosecuting attorneys, is that yes, you created policy. Yes, you were using the incorrect charging instrument, but that came by direction of the highest court in the land in 1884. So yes, you guys are complicit in the criminal act, but it wasn't your fault, because you were directed to do so by the highest court in the land until the highest court in the land corrects that unlawful decision, that unconstitutional decision made by the Waite court, which was a science experiment at best. Waite is well known for being a slave sympathizer. He wanted to advance the slavery institution. We need to get rid of every single thing that he put into place, because he was a disgusting human being, him and Tanny. But nonetheless, that decision was what directed every single prosecuting attorney in the country to be able to charge by way of information, not by indictment. Hurtado versus California, 1884. So if the executive branch wants to be the fall guy under the Chevron deference, the deference ruling, if they want to be the fall guy, then go ahead and be the fall guy. But now that you understand that it really wasn't your fault, then maybe you guys can work with me, and now we can put some pressure on the judicial branch to correct its unlawful acts in the same way the judicial branch just got the executive branch to correct its acts through Chevron. So we need to now look at the judicial branch. We need to put some focus on it. We need to correct its unlawful acts. But I'm going to need the help of the executive branch to do that. I'm going to need the help of the legislative branch to do that, because this is going to be a decision that they're not going to want to make, because this is going to result in understanding that when the highest court in the land, the court that directs all courts within its purview, every single court in the entire country is by direction of that Supreme Court of the United States. When the Supreme Court of the United States introduces fraud through one of its rulings by saying, in the case of Hurtado versus California, or even going back even further into 1833 with the Marshall Court, when the Marshall Court said that the Bill of Rights are not a restriction against state governments, rather restriction against the federal government, and that started what was known as the incorporation doctrine. And to this day, that is still standing Supreme Court precedent. And the reason why 23 states do not conduct a grand jury is because the Marshall Court in 1833 said the Bill of Rights don't apply to people in the United States anywhere other than what's controlled by the federal government, which is the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. So if you live within a state, you are not guaranteed what the Bill of Rights guarantee you to have. You're only guaranteed whatever the state provides you. And that's a decision that was made by the judicial branch in 1833. And when that happens, when that fraud is introduced by the highest court in the land, and it directs every single court within its purview to do something contrary to what the Constitution says, then that means that until that decision is removed and the correct decision is made by the highest court in the land, by that fraud of court, every single decision that's being made is being made unconstitutionally, because the highest court in the land directed everybody to do something that was not constitutional, contrary to what the Constitution meant. So, we've got a foundational issue that goes back to Chief Justice Marshall and his court, where they made a decision to not follow the will of the people and to not enforce the Constitution of the United States, and directed every single court within its purview to do so. And that's an unconstitutional ruling that must be removed. And that's actually my target. That's what we're looking at. Barron versus Baltimore, 1833. It must be removed. And when we remove it, then every single thing that comes from it, which is progeny, all the cases that descend from it, which if if what they said was that criminal defendants do not get the protections, immunities, and privileges that they're entitled to under the Constitution, then that would mean that every single criminal case since 1833 is progeny to that decision. And that's why I say that the court's not really happy with what I'm doing, but it has to be done, because the foundation is not the Constitution. Foundation is judge-made rulings, which is why when you bring up a civil rights issue and you say to a court, my civil rights are being violated, or I have a right that's here, they don't go to the Constitution to determine whether or not you have a right. Instead, they go to case law, because the Constitution is not the foundation. Judge-made rulings is the foundation. And we need to correct that, because judge-made rulings is not law. It's nothing. Because judges are tethered to positive law, particularly the Constitution. And when they don't follow the Constitution and they rely upon the flawed decision of the man that comes before them, or the flawed decision of the man that came before him, then what they're doing is without valid force or effect, because they're relying upon something that is not law, in violation of the promise that they made to the people of the United States, and they can no longer be trusted to fulfill their obligations. That's a violation of public trust. So
Well,
this is a big deal. Big deal.
No, the way you're going about it, though, I mean, either way, it's very disruptive to the system. There's a dramatic change. It goes on economically in every aspect of society by making these changes. And I much rather go with where they're working cooperatively with you and with us for these changes, because the other route is that it goes at a state level and we're doing common law courts, right? I mean, where you're literally getting the local sheriff and getting them and creating your own grand jury. Am I wrong? Like if we got nowhere, mind you, and that would be where the state would have to play. It is the state. It is the highest level of law, and we have to, as the people, go. And that's nasty, right? I mean, that's
yeah.
That's
chaos. That will lead to complete dissolution of the country, and that's where we're heading right now. Because we're seeing these states that are already fracturing and breaking apart. They're not participating in the central government anymore. They're creating their own laws and saying, you know what, we're not going to do that because we don't have harmony across the union. You see, a union is defined as two or more non-sovereign states with a central governing structure. So they must be non-sovereign, because a non-sovereign state is a state not complete in itself, subject to a higher government's laws. So a state like the state of California, it can't be sovereign because it's subject to a higher government's laws. Therefore, it's non-sovereign, right? Because it gave up its sovereignty to subject itself to the supremacy of the United States Constitution. Now, the difference is that confederacy is defined as two or more sovereign states with a loose, decentralized governing structure. So when the state of California says, I'm sovereign, and the state of Washington says, I'm sovereign, and the state of Texas says, I'm sovereign, now we have a confederacy. We do not have a union, because a union subjects itself, these regional governments would subject themselves to the higher government, to the supremacy of the United States Constitution. So when you have a confederacy, then they create their own laws. They treat their people however they want. And you have a complete breakdown, fracturing, and dissolution of the nation, because we don't have harmony among them. Because the only thing that creates harmony among America, the only thing that makes America America, is American laws. So we have the laws that govern us, the Constitution of the United States. But when the states say, you know what, we're sovereign and we can do what we want in the manner in which we see fit, then we do not have a union anymore. We do not have harmony anymore. And so, yes, the problem is that if we broke this down to a state level, we would not have a nation anymore. We would have 50 nations. We would have a European Union or an American Union, whatever you want to call it. We would have a confederacy. And that's what we have today. We've never actually became a union because we've never given up the state sovereignty. States do not have sovereignty. They've never had sovereignty because you gave up your sovereignty to join the union and subject yourself to the laws of the United States. And so when you choose to create your own laws and govern people in the way that you see fit, then that would be an equal protection issue, because no state shall create any law that does not provide equal protection of the law. And yet in the state of Alabama, you don't have the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress grievances. In the state of Washington, you don't have the right to indict by a grand jury, but you do in Oregon. This is a complete breakdown of our union. And we need to come back and realize that states do not create laws that affect people. United States citizens are not subject to laws of states, because if they have their own laws, you got to understand, Article 3 says, in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. So if the state chooses to create its own laws and then subject the people to them through one of its agents, then that state must recuse itself from acting as a judge in the cause, because the state cannot be presumed to be neutral and biased when it itself is a party in the cause. And therefore, if a state creates its own laws, then the United States Supreme Court has jurisdiction to be the judge, because you needed a neutral, unbiased third party to act as a judge. The United States of America didn't create the laws, the state did. Therefore, if the state creates its own laws, enforces it through one of its agents, it cannot be the judge. Supreme Court of the United States is. However, the way it was meant to be is that when the laws of the United States are created, they are then federated out to each of the regional governments for application administration. Federate them out. So we have a representative government that comes together, creates the laws, right, together as a union, all working together to figure out what we're going to do. And then they would federate those laws out to the regional governments for application administration, so that all men are equal, no matter where they choose to reside within the jurisdiction of the United States. That way, when someone breaks the laws of the United States, the accuser is the United States of America, right? But the United States of America cannot be presumed to be neutral and biased to act as a judge in the case if its own agents are coming forward to accuse and enforce laws. Therefore, we need a neutral, unbiased third party to act as a judge, which was what the states were created to do. The states are to be the judges, because the United States of America would bring the criminal act, the criminal accusation. And now you have the separation of powers. That's how it works. So when the United States of America brings the laws and brings an accusation of violation of laws, the judge can act as a neutral and biased third party, because it is not the government that created the laws, and therefore it is separate to be able to act as a neutral, unbiased decision maker, right? And so the purpose of the judiciary was to protect the minority from the majority. Their purpose was to guarantee that that person got the rights that they're entitled to, because they're disconnected from the one actually seeking the enslavement, the separation of church and state, as you might say. You know, so these judges have lost their way. They've completely lost their way. They've lost their way because they work for the very entity that's profiting off of the enslavement of these people. They're part of it. They're profiting off of the involuntary servitude of the weakest, most vulnerable in our society in these institutions that we call sweatshops in China, but prisons here in America.
Well, I think
that's not what they were created to do at all.
And just getting back to simpler terms for most people watching this, we are getting this slavery for the simple fact that we're uneducated. Is there any argument to that?
No.
Uneducated republic, and it's pretty much it's slavery. An educated republic is freedom. Uneducated republic, which is a limited democracy, you have a chance for freedom.
Yeah.
But uneducated is always slavery. And I think there's an intention to that. But what you're trying to do with your actions is educate the people at the top right now. Yeah. You're looking for the trickle effect here. You'd like it to everybody to start becoming more aware and awake to this common misconception of the law.
I mean, so the way I like to say it is that this issue of criminality, the way we're trying to solve it is never going to work. You cannot go out and fight from the bottom up. You can't go out and arrest the people for the crimes that they commit, because if our country is being led by criminals, people are acting outside of the law. Because remember, a criminal is simply one that transgressed the law. And it doesn't matter if you're transgressing the Constitution, you're transgressing state statute. If you transgress the law, you're a criminal. But if our country is being led by criminals, then they're going to lead us toward criminality, right? Which will create an environment of criminality, and that will produce a society of criminals. So we cannot arrest people for crimes that are being committed and expect those convictions and arrests to be valid if the top is committing crimes at the beginning. Because there's a maximum law that says that any unconstitutional act or unlawful act at the beginning cannot become lawful over time or by subsequent legislation. So if the very first step is unlawful because you're not following the Constitution, the very document laws that create your office and grant you your authority, if you're committing a criminal act in the very, very beginning, then what you're producing is not valid. It's criminal. It's unlawful. So if you want to have, people be accountable for the crimes that they commit, then you yourself need to be above the law. I mean, if you're going to be a piece of shit criminal standing at the top saying I'm leading this country in a lawful direction because I'm so honorable, I'm going to call the bullshit flag on that, because that's not what you're doing. You're kind of a piece of shit. And I'm going to call you out for it, because I'm not going to call someone honorable, because just as Justice Hugo Black said in 1960, honorable men honor the law. And you're not honoring the law. I've shown you that your actions are criminal. 32 attorney generals. You want to walk around and talk about how amazing you are and leader, or do you want to accept the fact that you guys are destroying our country and you're profiting off of your illegal acts? And then to add insult to injury, you make us stand up and call you honorable when you walk into the courtroom? Are you insane? Like, you're destroying our country, and you're doing it for what? So you can get some votes? So you can make some money, so you can get an easy conviction because you don't want to waste the time, because you want to say that blame the system and the laws for your incompetence. I mean, I'm going to call you out for your situation, because you guys are what's destroying this country. It's not the people out there committing crimes. You guys are creating the crimes. You guys are, because if you want to lead our country in a lawful direction, then you'll produce a good environment, which will produce a good citizenry, right? Because I know that I'm going to follow leaders and where they go. And I did for half of my life, following criminals. And I myself became a criminal as a result of that, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to follow you guys, because I know what you are now, and I'm going to call you out for what you are. But we need to understand that if our country is being led by criminals, then we're going to be led toward crime. And then we wonder why we have mass incarceration. We wonder why we have increased crime rate, because they're criminals. They're leading us. And so we need to stop following them, because there's nothing honorable in breaking the law. There's nothing honorable in robbing the people of the United States so that you can line your own pockets and then blame the law for your incompetence. I would say that before you say that something is imperfect, I would first suggest that you use it the way it's designed to be used. Don't blame it for your incompetence or your laziness, because that's all that it is. The law is clear. It says what you have to do. And if you don't follow it, you're a criminal. So we need to first ensure that we have leaders that are leading our country in a lawful direction. I love faith and obedience to law, respect for the will of the people and laws they established. And when we do that, then we're going to be heading in a good direction, and then we can start resolving the issue of criminality. But don't presume that you can make decisions, right? Create a task force that you call drug task force that buy, sell, manufacture drugs. They create a criminal environment where this drug use can be done, where you, government, are creating it because of your task force. And then when people come in and break the law and become an addicted individual, because you, of course, created that criminal environment, and then you're going to send them off to prison to profit off of them and call them the evil, horrible people, but yet you created this criminal environment. Again, I'm going to call bullshit on that. If you are going to make a decision that says that porn is completely legal, right? It's simply a freedom of speech, and yet you're supposed to be the moral protagonist for our country, leading our country in a moral direction. And then you say, oh, well, we're going to start sending all these sexual deviants off to prison now, because remember, today, the majority of people that are going to prison have got something to do with sexual deviance, right? That's now the vehicle that's driving mass incarceration, because as the judges would like to say, who's going to stick up for a sex offender, right? Just like they did in the 1960s when they said, who's going to stick up for a drug addict, right? This narrative is repeating itself. They're creating this environment so that they can create sexual deviance, so that eventually that will create sexual deviance, and that will then feed mass incarceration and continued that direction. So if you are going to say that you're our moral leaders, right? You're going to say that you're leading our country, then I would say lead us in a good moral direction. Don't make decisions that's going to line your pockets and then blame the people for your criminal environment that you created. Yeah.
You knocked it out of the park here. I'm going to do a little projection here. So say we've got some success with the Supreme Court, at the judicial branch, the executive branch. We have a trickle-down effect where now the states are making changes. this is a complete overhaul of the system. Could you give me a little bit of how you would want to work this out? Let's just put some manifestation that we get some real good progress. We get some beautiful changes. How do
Yeah.
we implement it in a realistic manner to make this
Yeah.
overall happen? I know you
Yeah.
thought of it.
So this is what I want to propose to people in the United States, and it's a good time to do it, right? This is my vision. I'm not really prepared to do this, but let's go ahead and lay this out for you for the vision, because I think it's time for the people to hear what I have to say as far as what I want to see happen. I'm not an abolitionist. There are people that are a danger to society. We need to address that. First off, we need to switch from a punitive-based system, because we're not going to punish anymore. We're going to switch into a public health system, a restorative-based system. So we're going to look at the issue of criminality, the issue of morality as a matter of public health. And we're going to take hurting people, we're going to put them into an environment where we can heal them from the hurts that have affected them. One of the main ways is that this system today, if you look at it, it costs the people of the United States about $600 billion every single year. Now, that number, I know people would say, is extremely high, but what they're not taking into account is some of the long-term effects. When you remove male from the household, now you've got a single house mother that's working. You've got children that are now going to be put into a lower socioeconomic status. So you have a massive amount of back-end cost with with food stamps and other things, these social programs that are directly affected or directly the result of this institution. So the estimate is around $600 billion that we spend right now today on this system that does nobody any good except for a bunch of judges, attorneys, and prosecutors, right? So they're the ones that are making $600 billion a year by creating an environment that crime can be committed in, by creating an environment where we can take hurting people and put them into a more hurtful situation and then expect them to get out and be healed, right? Which doesn't work. It makes them a better criminal, right? Because it creates more crime, more trauma, and now they go out and create more hurting people. So the reality is that the people that are benefiting from this are the ones that are actually fueling it and driving it, right? We got to be honest with that, because they're the only ones that benefit from it. The taxpayers don't get any benefit from a person being put into a hurtful situation and then hurt even more and sent out. That doesn't, the criminal himself isn't, because he's just becoming a better criminal so he can go out and commit more crimes, right? The victim isn't getting anything out of it because, well, hey, they just become a victim hurting themselves because nobody cares about the trauma that just happened to them, right? Now they're going to go hurt people. So this system is creating itself. It's not its business model to make people better, to heal them. It's in the business model to hurt them even more. So what I'm saying is that this system, it's got to go away, right? And we need to change the way that we deal with it, right? We don't take a person and enslave them. We take a person, we give them life, okay? So the thing is that it costs, national average is $65,000 to $80,000 to send a person to prison for 1 year. National average. The federal side is up around 120,000. California is like 110,000. So it costs a lot of money. Now, I don't balance my checkbook, right? I'm sorry, I don't do that. I'm not a big numbers guy, but we talk about having a deficit here in America, and we have 2.9 million people that are currently sitting in prison that's on roughly $65,000 to $80,000 per year. I don't balance my checkbook, but I think I might have just figured out where our problem's at, guys. I mean, it is what it is. So $65,000 to $80,000 national average, send a person to prison for 1 year. I can take a person and send him to University of Washington for full tuition for $12,000. $12,000, right? Full tuition, 1 year. That gives him a life. That gives him a future. That benefits him. That benefits society, because he's going to come out with a life. With God, we're going to create him into what he wants to be and give him happiness and these things that he needs. Right? I could send him to 5 years full tuition for the same price as the low end to send him to prison for 1 year. You know, we've already got these institutions in place, and so what I'm proposing is that, you know, one of the best educations that a person can get is the military academies. West Point, Annapolis. I mean, you get a phenomenal education, but it's a prison, right? You go to these institutions, and the first 2 years, you don't get to leave. It sucks, right? Year 3, you get weekends off. Year 4, you know, you can leave it at nights, but you know, it's a prison, right? And you have to learn how to operate within it. But you get just a phenomenal education. What I'm saying is that let's focus on on something like that. So what I'm looking at is that the Montgomery GI Bill, which is a post enlistment tuition benefit program. So if you join the military and you serve 2 years in the military, you get out and they give you $40,000 to go to college. That's how I got my education. I came from an extremely poor family. I would have never been able to do it if this country hadn't given me such a wonderful benefit and given me the ability to go out and get the education that I got. It would have never happened. I was made who I am because of the benefit that this nation gave me. It was a path that I was on. I want to see that path for a lot more people, a lot more, because the way that they started the Montgomery GI Bill was after the Vietnam War. They took $250 million and they put it into a low interest savings account. And from that account, they draw just the interest only off of it, just the interest. And that pays for every single service member to go and get a college degree. They never have to put another cent into it. And that's $250 million. So what I'm proposing is, let's, for the next 3 years, let's take this $600 billion that we're wasting, right, on lawyers, judges, and attorneys, right? It's not doing anyone any good. Let's take that $600 billion. Let's put that into a low interest savings account, okay? And then year 4, let's start drawing that interest only out of it. And let's make education finally free for everybody. Let's make people what they were meant to be. Let's help facilitate that, because that benefits everybody, right? If we draw the interest out of that, the interest will be able to pay for it, because I can send a person to University of Washington for full tuition for $12,000, right? Instead of $65,000 to $80,000 to send him to prison. So I think that instead of taking the poor and saying, I don't want to educate you, I just want to enslave you, right? In this chattel slavery that we call sweatshops in China, but prisons here in America, and we're just going to lie to the American people and say that you're nothing but a piece of shit criminal, which you're not, because I'm going to tell you right now, some of the smartest and most creative people I've ever met are in prison, right? These are people that are amazing. They're smart, they're talented, but we're not directing that talent in the proper direction. When you have a gang member, right, who is out there managing thousands of gang members, right? They're some of the most obstinate and disruptive people that there are. This is a natural born leader, right? Why are we not harvesting that and using that to benefit all, right? Why are we permitting, us to just say you're nothing but worthless piece of shit that's going to remain in? No, let's take that. Let's harvest. Let's bring him about to something better. When you have a person that creates a multinational drug organization that's making millions of dollars, this is a natural born CEO. Are you serious? Like, why are we not harvesting this? Why are we not taking this and directing it in a proper direction? When you have artists and I mean, these people, they're not worthless. They're amazing, right? Because they're just like every one of us. We just haven't taken what's amazing about them and focused it in a positive direction. Instead, we've labeled them and allowed this system to say that they're nothing but criminals, and we need to separate them from society so we can force them into involuntary servitude and work for the direct benefit of the state. And then we're going to lie to the whole country and say that they're criminals, they're felons. No, I don't want that anymore. So what I'm saying is that let's build a faith-based education system that will benefit our country, and let's ensure that every single person becomes exactly what God created them to be. Let's help them do that. We have the facilities today. We have the operations today. We have the ability for on-site vocational training. If you're going to become a doctor, great. You're going to be here for 10 years, but you're going to get your education. You're going to get your vocational training. We're going to make you exactly what you want to be. There's going to be 3 miracles that will happen to our country as a result of what I'm proposing here, right? Miracle number 1 is we say that we have a drug problem here in America. Right? We have a drug problem. So we have a whole bunch of hurting people. They're looking for an artificial mechanism to be happy, because it's not normal for people to be unhappy. So as a result, we don't give a shit about why these people aren't hurting. Instead, we just give them this artificial mechanism to be happy. So instead of just simply giving them something that's going to treat the symptom, we're going to come in, we're going to treat the problem by saying, you know what happened to you, whatever it was, is okay. You deserve respect. You deserve love. You deserve to be made into what it was that you were meant to be. And so when we start caring about people, we will start seeing a change in those people. Because one of the reasons why people kill another human being is because they don't have respect for life. But that respect for life drives from their own respect. So if we can get these people to say, no, you're worth love, you're worth respect, you're worth being, cared about and appreciated, then through that respect for their own selves, they will respect others. This well known. I mean, there are nations that have gone this direction that we can see. Israel is a great example in the kibbutz, where they actually sentence people to go to this particular community in Israel. If you've been convicted of violent crime, they send you there to learn how to live peacefully, because the environment that you're in dictates what you learn. So as our leaders continue to lead us in the direction of criminality, because they're out embezzling from the Social Security Administration so that they can funnel money to Ukraine, or they're out creating an environment where crime can be committed because they want to seize property and stuff under these secret police forces called drug task forces. When we do that, we are creating an environment, and then we wonder why we create criminals as a result. So I'm saying that let's educate people. So miracle number one, we're no longer going to have a drug problem, because we start healing the reason why the drugs exist, because it's the hurt and trauma in the individual that caused them to want the drug. So we can heal that. We don't have a drug problem here in America anymore, because we got a bunch of happy people that are living their lives happy and don't need drugs when they're happy. Miracle number two is we say we have a crime problem here in America. We do. We have a crime problem. We have a crime problem because we have criminals leading us, and we need to address that. Because if we can put leaders in office that are going to lead us in a good direction and be good moral leaders for the rest of the people will follow that. Because I don't think the people want to go in a criminal direction. They want to be inspired. They want to be led. But they have to be led by the right people. And if the wrong people are leading us, then we will be led in the wrong direction. We're certainly going in the wrong direction. So miracle number two is we will no longer have a crime problem here in America, because we're going to take these people that we call criminals today, and we're going to make them a person. We're going to make them a citizen. We're going to make them, what they were meant to. We're going to bring them back from the direction that we were going, because we're no longer going to follow a bunch of criminals in the direction that they're leading us. Miracle number three is, like I said before, I don't balance my checkbook, but we say we have a deficit problem here in America. We have a deficit problem because we got $600 billion that's going to make criminals more wealthy. And so we're no longer going to have that, because we're going to take that $600 billion we're wasting today, we're going to put it into a low interest savings account, which means that on year 4, we're no longer going to be paying $600 billion, because there's not going to be a need for that anymore, because we've taken the problem and we're going to use it in a much more efficient way, and we're going to draw the interest out of it, and we're going to give back that money to people. So we're no longer going to be paying those taxes, and so we're going to get that money back. It's going to come back to us. So we can solve these problems, and we can have 3 miracles. But the problem is that I need the people's support to do this. I can't do this on my own. I'm only one constituent, 330 million people, right? I'm given a vision for the direction that I would like to see the country go. You guys can listen to that. You guys can say, well, that sounds pretty good. I'd like to head that direction. And if we go that way, great. But I can't do it on my own, right? I'm going to need the support of everybody out there. I'm going to need the support of the people of the United States. You guys are going to have to get behind this if this is a vision that you guys think will work. Because there's no way that I can make this happen unless the people want this to happen.
I think you're doing your part. You're trying to enlighten us. And my favorite Nikola Tesla quote has always been, if humanity ever wants to find peace, humanity has to find enlightenment. And that's where we're at right now, where I think there is the tipping point where you could feel it, just having social media, the access to information. I've had these conversations before that I thought I was hidden. Like 10, 15 years ago, we would have these kind of conversations in small rooms with 1 or 2 people, but now I'm seeing it across the board. You're getting more people involved. The younger people getting more involved. What else can we do to help you on your journey? And then other things that we should be looking into, becoming more aware of in this process that you're on, that we should be getting more involved with?
Yeah. Well, I hate to say this, but I always have to say it. 9 years ago, I owned an engineering firm. I was a multimillionaire, and I had a lot of money. I could buy anything, but I was on the wrong side. And I decided back then, I said that I'm no longer going to work for money, because I had come to my level, my measure of greatness, who I was as a man, was measured based upon the things I had. And that's a terrible way for a man to be. But that's the way I was. And so, I had to have more money. That was my life. but I've come to understand that you cannot be proud of the things you have, rather things that you do. So, you know, I gave all that up years ago because I didn't want to continue to measure myself based upon the things that I had. And I made a lot of promises to a lot of kids, a lot of wives, that I would not take another paycheck until I got their husbands and fathers home. And I've been truthful to that. I've been absolutely true. So I don't get paid. I don't take contracts. That's why I say I will not work for anyone. I will only work for everyone, because my passion is what I'm doing here. And they say that you found your passion when you will continue to do it, even when there's no money, because you love it that much. I love this. This is my passion. And I found this passion because there was no money, because I didn't have the money to focus on and follow it and say, oh, well, there's no more money, so I'm going to go over here and do this now. No, I found my passion, but I found it because there was no money. And so they say that once you find your passion and you give that to other people, that becomes your purpose. This is my purpose. But my point is that it's extremely difficult to do what I do. You know, I'm in this suit because this is what I have. This is the appearance that I have to have. This is the image that I have to maintain. But I want people to know that I am absolutely every day teetering on the verge of extreme vulnerability, because I don't get paid. I don't ask for things. And I don't want money to be my focus, because if it does, then that becomes my passion. And I don't care about that anymore. I want to focus on service. I want to provide the best service that I can. I want to do what is in the best interest of people, not what's in the best interest of the business and the money and all the rest. So every single day, I provide service to all of you guys, because that's what I want to focus on. That's where I want to be. And if I do that, then I operate on a donation only. I do that because I want to focus on providing the best service possible. But in being able to accomplish what I'm doing, I got to have help back. And it's not much. I mean, I'm not asking for a whole lot, but there are resources that I need. There's travel expenses. There's a number of different things that we do have that are actual tangible costs that I cannot overcome. You know, I personally have hitchhiked across this country this last year, more than once. I've been across this country 12 times, back and forth, one side to another. But I do what's necessary because I love this what I'm doing. I love this country. I love the service that I'm providing. So my point is that we do have some real, actual, tangible costs. I'm not trying to enrich myself. I have no house. I have no car anymore. My motorcycle is done, and I don't know if I'm going to get back on one anytime soon with some of the injuries. But nonetheless, you know, we're ramping up now to a time when there are going to be some real legitimate costs. There's going to be reproduction necessary for going into the court. I'm looking at roughly 2 million criminal affidavits that we're going to be collecting from across the country from individuals. That's what this next tour is going to be focused on. I'm going to need to be able to print those documentation. I need to be able to have the ink to do it. So I want to say right now that we are asking for funding, and it's going to be a very, very urgent need for this funding, because as I start this next tour, because we've got another tour that we're planning, and this tour is going to be focused on the judicial branch, because the last one was focused on the executive branch. This one is going to be circling the country one last time to bring about what's necessary to make the judicial branch do what they're supposed to do. So, but in doing so, I need 2 million. The number I'm looking for is 2 million criminal affidavits. Before we went across the country, and I only served one on the attorney generals, just one, to bring in the states and join them. But now we're going to go across the country once again. We're going to serve these attorney generals once again for the deprivation of the child, the child issue, right? But in the process, we're going to be collecting 2 million criminal affidavits, and I'm going to return to DC. And when I get back to DC, I want 2 million of these, because I want to walk into the Supreme Court and ask them what they want to do with 2 million criminal affidavits, crimes that have been committed in every single state, every single judge, all these they've all committed this crime under your authority by your institution. What do you want to do about it, Supreme Court? And I want to take those 2 million in. I want to drop it off, and I want that to be the final punch. But there's going to be some real tangible costs, you guys. And I know that it's hard to give up money, you know, when you're not seeing exactly what's going on. But I'm asking you for your faith at this point in time to say that put it in me one last time here, one more time. Give me one last chance to circle this country, 40 days. I know that I told you a specific date. I'm not going to tell you another date, but we got the first round. We got the first question addressed there. Give me a chance to get the second question addressed, and help me get on the road to do this one more time. Promise you, I will not give up until this is done. But we've got some real tangible costs to do it. So if you guys are inspired, you guys want to help, you guys see this as a value to you, if you appreciate the service and you want to see more of it, we've got Cash App, we've got Chime, we've got Venmo, we've got PayPal. They're all exactly the same. It is We Shall Be Free. That's WESHALLBEFREE. We shall be free. And I would welcome all the blessings that you guys offer. If you can't give any money, then say a prayer. And I think that in the end, we're going to find that those prayers are going to be more valuable than any money that you guys donate our way. But I want to get across the country one more time. I want to do this one more time. I want to show you guys that we have the power. And I'd like to see you guys out on the road. So that's where we're at. I hope to see all of you, and give me another 40 days, please. Another 40 days.
We'll have your links attached to the videos. Do you have I guess you don't have a page yet up where we can kind of see your progression a little bit? Maybe another page, like a GoFundMe page that's more directed.
So we do have another page, another website that's coming up, TanawahDowning.com. I know that there's the We Shall Be Free 2023.com as well. We don't have the website there. I'm sorry, that was a pretty low priority this last time, but I do have some people that are helping, some people dedicated now to what we're doing in the efforts, and I believe we're going to have some web pages up really, really soon. Just understand that you know, one of the things that I have to do is I've spent the last 3 years eliminating every single state contract that I had. No driver's license, because a driver's license it changes your legal relationship with the state. So I can't have a license. I can't have a house. I can't have an apartment. I can't have a job. I can't have a bank account. I can't have a marriage. I can't have kids. All of those are contracts that change your legal relationship with the state. I had to remove every one of them. And that was necessary to reach what's called sui juris, because I can now walk into a courtroom of my own volition and enter any contract of my own volition without breaching a state contract. That's why a prosecutor is necessary, because you have contracts with the state. So when you enter into a state and you sign a contract saying I'm going to drive with a driver's license, now you're subject to state laws, right? Because you've agreed to your contract to be subjected to it. Therefore, when you breach the contract terms, now you need someone to come in sui juris to negotiate the terms of the contract, which is a prosecutor, right? So that person is acting in a sui juris status to negotiate the terms of the contract for your breach of contract terms with the state. So I had to eliminate all those to reach my own sui juris status, so that I could walk into the Supreme Court of the United States and say, you must hear what I have to say, because there is no other state court that has jurisdiction over me, right? I can go in and I can invoke Article 3 under my own authority, because I can negotiate the terms of my own contract. There is no state agent that has to negotiate on my behalf. I'm sui juris. I can negotiate the terms of any contract in my own volition. That's what sui juris means, and that's what I've been doing. So one of the things that you guys need to understand is that when I say that Cash App, Venmo, Pay, there's reasons why I use those, and I can only use them, and that's because I can't have an address, you guys. I can't have a home, because if I did, that would be a contract. It would bind me to adherence with state laws. I've raised myself up out of the state realm. I'm operating only in a federal realm. I travel across the country. I'm not subject to any state, because I don't remain in any state for long enough to establish residency, to require a license, an ID, or anything else. They can't enforce the laws of a different state. I claim Washington, D.C. as my residency. You know, I mean, that's not a state. So all of this raises me up outside of the state's limited statutory governing limits. And in doing so, there's certain things that I have to sacrifice every day that I don't think that most people really understand. One of those is that I can't have a bank account, you guys. So the fact that I'm asking for a Cash App, I don't even have a Cash App card. I have to use my phone because that's the only way that it eliminates the need for an address. So you guys, I just want you to know that there's a lot of sacrifices that I have to make, but I make them because it's part of the strategy that we have to do what I'm doing. And it's not because I'm trying to, live an easy life or not have a job or whatever. I want you guys to.
I'm glad you're clarifying these things, because people do need to understand what kind of commitment you are taking and making to be able to enforce these rules and these laws. It's not just we're putting down these papers and getting it notarized by this, what a lot of people try to do. We get our state notary and send it in to the secretary and we're done. You've changed every aspect of your life to try to make this your mission. And so, like, when I was asking you about those other pages, maybe that we could talk about it a little bit offline, but I said I got the marketing department and I've got some web guys, and maybe we could throw some things in to help out with the marketing of that. But I appreciate you having this conversation with us, because it allows the audience to understand to what level you're playing this game. And it needs to be.
I understand. Scripture says that you have to give up everything to follow Christ, everything. Guys, I gave up everything. You have no idea what I gave up. I mean, even my kids, 9 years ago, I haven't spoken to them in 9 years because that was a necessary contract that had to be given up in order to do what I'm doing. I'm all in. I've been all in since day one. I won't stop. There's that either that army retreats or God calls me home. There's no way out of this. So, and we're there, right? Because I've taken the sacrifice. I've done the things that are done, and I haven't told you guys about that because part of it is I didn't want them to fully understand how much I actually knew and what I was doing, because we're at a point now where the only play that they got left is to eliminate the threat, eliminate the dispute, and I'm the dispute. That's why my motorcycle had what happened to it the other day, and I got into an accident. Because the best way to eliminate this dispute is to eliminate me, because I am the dispute. So, as I continue to move forward here, you guys got to understand that if I don't do this quickly, if I don't have the resources that are necessary to do it, if I can't have the people watching my back now on this particular trip, then I probably won't make it. I probably won't make it through this time. There's a lot of people that would love to help, and that I think would be excellent resources to be able to watch my six when I'm not able to do it myself. But I can't support that. I can't bring them because I don't have resources to do it. But I'm telling you right now that the situation that we're in, it's real, and this is elevated to a level where I'm not spending more than one night in any single location. I'm not on phones giving up my phone number. This is certainly at a whole new level, and it's a level that I knew I was going to reach, but it's a level that if you guys don't recognize it, and you guys don't see it for what it is, and then see what I'm doing as valuable, then I'm not going to be able to continue to do it, because I'm not going to be here any longer. Okay, so that's why I say that there is a lot that I've had to do. I've had to sacrifice a lot, but I would do this over again any day, because I love this country that much. So it's an honor to be able to serve it. I want every one of these public officials to realize how much of an honor it is to serve this country. And if they're unwilling to do that, then I'll step into the position to show the country how honorable it is, because they're not doing that job. They're not doing it. I don't like where they're leading our children. And so I'll take their place any day. And so the choice they got is they can either come over here and notify their co-conspirators of their intent to no longer participate in the criminal conspiracy with me, or I will make sure that they go down as exactly what they are, and that's all that history will remember them as, is the criminals that they are today. Thank you.
So donations, prayers, is there anything else we could help you with that 2 million number you need to hit with?
Yeah. So as soon as the websites are up, we have the form, right? It's a very, very simple form. There's only about 5 or 6 items. It was 5 or 6 different blocks. They cannot change. We are establishing a class action case here. with every single one of these people, millions and millions of people. So you can't use your own criminal affidavit. You can't add your own situation. We can't talk about how Billy Joe, told you this, or Bob said that. No, we are doing a very, very specific criminal affidavit, and that is what crime occurred to you that is the common thread that happened to everybody, right? We will not change it. We will not add anything to it. So we have this form, and it's already in an automated format, and we're going to have it on the websites. And so once it's up and running, once the websites are up and running, I will be able to direct everybody to those websites, and we will have the ability to be able to save those, do an electronic signature. I know that the court won't accept electronic signature, but I don't care for these first 2 million, because I'm not walking in there expecting them to do anything except for concede. That's all it is. We're gonna hit them with such a flood of evidence that you know what, if you don't concede, I will go and personally get those 2 million signatures. Damn to you, right? So this is all we're doing. We're just simply stepping and ratcheting it up a little bit. And if they want to be obstinate and say, oh, well, we don't accept electronic signatures, and I'm going to say, I'll go get 4 million then, and I'll see in 6 months with the signatures. But it's up to you what you want to do, because if that's what, that's not going to be too smart. So I don't think they have the balls to do that. So we're going to accept electronic signatures. We're going to get the forms. They don't have to be perfect or whatever, because my intent is that these guys are not going to be, they're not going to be sitting there preparing to argue each one of these. This is a wave of evidence that's so significant that they will concede and do what is necessary to fix this problem. And I just want them to know about the train wreck that's heading their way, because it'd be a whole lot easier if they just conceded tomorrow and kept me from having to do this 40-day journey. But if they want to continue to pretend like nothing's going on, then let's see how serious I am.
Okay. And so this is our next 40-day journey.
Next 40-day journey. I want to be on the road. I want to be on the road within the next, let's say 2 weeks, but I need resources to do it, guys. So whatever you can do.
We're going to work on that. And then where else can people follow you to keep up with you on your journey?
We got TikTok. We got TikTok, we got YouTube, we got Facebook, and we got Instagram. I'm not big on Instagram, but we put out everything on Facebook. You're welcome to come out, follow me there. I know it's not the best place in the world, but at least you'll get information. TikTok, I put lots and lots of stuff out on TikTok. I'm trying to do it more. I know that we've got a marketing person that's now dedicated to this, and she's going to be phenomenal. She's going to be getting information out there. We got another a tour manager that's going to be phenomenal. I mean, I think that we've got the potential resource at this point in time to be able to put me into the position I need to be in, which is focused on speaking as opposed to the back end. How do I communicate through social media better? Because it's not my area of expertise. But so yeah, you can follow us there. And then we will have some contact information too. I don't want to do that yet because I don't feel quite safe quite yet. But here within the next 2 weeks, we'll get a schedule out. We'll get the route plan out, and pray for me that we can make it across this country once again. This time focused on the judges and getting them to accept their criminality instead of the attorney generals.
Well, I can only thank you for this time you had today, but also as a human. I mean, not just as an American, but as a human, and helping out the people that are forgotten. I mean, you're just an example, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it and how inspired I am by this conversation and your journey. And whatever we can do on this side to help, we are at your disposal.
Yeah. Well, I just got to say, I appreciate you saying that, but I would be nothing without God. So all glory to him. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful.